fantastic. That's Tony. I'm going to sit down here and watch this.
Come down here and watch this, Craig.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about you, actually.
Oh, no. I guess I'm going
You have to get your solar cell
Why not
wiring
QRP?
there.
Because Craig
Double
does.
duty, that could be
I want to be like Craig.
Load it up.
Now, do you already see this? I can flip the...
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go to the trip.
All right. Well, this is what you get when no one else volunteers. I'm going to be up here preaching to the choir a little bit about why I QRP. I mean, I think if I take a poll, let's do a quick poll. How many of you guys have done QRP? Pretty much 2/3, just like I thought. Where's Orsi? Did she already leave? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I QRP and how I got started into it. This picture has a lot of meaning to me. It's part of my QRP journey. I think most of you can identify one person in it.
No.
Probably the guy on the right, I'm hoping. At least everybody knows who that is.
Who is that again?
The guy on the right?
Yeah.
It's Craig. No. The person on the left, a few of you have met him. That's my dad.
Oh.
And this was at Dayton a couple years ago. Now, the bonus prize is, can anybody name who the person in the middle is?
Bob Heil.
Bob Isle, no, not that. He's a famous QRPer. I'll give you a hint. He has the same last name as me. So if you know my last name, you have a shot at this.
Oh, Paul Stroud.
Paul Stroud, yeah. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Paul Stroud. I first came across his name when I was reading a QRP book by Rich Harlan through the ARL. And he's actually, a number of times he set the record for greatest distance miles per watt. And I forget what the number is. It's like hundreds of thousands. And so when I read his name in the book, I thought, well, that's kind of cool. There's another Stroud involved with this thing of ham radio and QRP specifically. Well, along the way, I had earned worked all state QRP through the QRP Amateur Radio Club International, ARCI. And when I went to send in my application, I realized, hey, this guy is the awards manager for it. So I sent it in, and I didn't think anything much about it, other than I just kind of thought it was kind of cool that it was the same guy. Well, he sends me a nice email, and we connect, and we traded some emails on the way, and come find he was going to be in Dayton that year, and my dad and I were going, so we thought, well, let's have a three-way QSO meet face-to-face, and so he showed up, and so that's kind of a cool picture of the three of us. At probably the only three Strouds in all of Dayton that day, maybe, but it was just kind of nice to meet him, and he was a great guy. So now everybody knows who AA4XX. So remember that one. He's in North Carolina.
What was the QRP record?
You know, I don't know what it is now. When he said it, I think they set it at like a few 100,000 miles per watt, and it wasn't a huge distance. It was just very low wattage. I think it was all on the East Coast type of thing. Milliwatting, basically, is what it was. All right. So how this whole presentation started, this is kind of what I'm going to talk about. Last winter, early spring, one of the local clubs emailed me and said, can you find someone that can come and talk to us about QRP? We have a few members that have expressed some interest in it. And I checked, and you know, everybody's kind of busy, and so I thought, well, maybe I could throw this together. It won't be anything super technical because, as a lot of you know, that's not my background, but I can at least talk to them about why I enjoy it, and maybe that'll get some of them enthused about it too. But I thought, well, if there's ever an opening, I'll fill it in, and so you guys are going to get to hear it too. So a little bit, you know, how did I get here? Talking about what is and why QRP. How do you get started? It's just some different things I want to walk through. For most of you, this is not going to be anything new, but maybe it'll get a few of you excited enough to maybe want to try it. Paul Bushhouse. So first, my career had nothing to do with radio electronics. I'm an accountant, CPA. I do have a minor in computer science. I took some programming classes when I was in college. I thought I enjoyed it. But that's as close as it got. Got my novice license in '79 when I lived in Ohio, and that's where my family still is. But then I did nothing for 30 years, kind of. I did about 25 years into it, I did sit and take my tech test and pass that, but, you know, until I joined this club a few years ago, I really had done nothing with ham radio for 30 years. So this club, and earlier when we were QRP club, Minnesota QRP club, that's where it got started for me. I had an interest in electronics early on. My dad is a radio electrician going back to the Air Force days, and he's remained in electronics pretty much his whole life. But you know, when I was a kid, we built an AM radio kit together, so I kind of got my feet wet a little bit on this whole thing. But still, you know, it was interesting. I used it a lot, but it didn't really catch until I started getting into, and it's probably the reason I took the radio class with my friend. Then I came here, and QRP Society, St. Paul Radio Club, Circuit Builders with Orsi and the gang, you know, that was a huge piece of it as well. I got to build the Easy Keyer, Craig's Pickell. Started getting from that Pickell, started realizing, hey, there's a connection between what I learned in college with computer programming and something to do with ham radio. Even though I hadn't done it for a long time, at least I was seeing a connection with what I had done in the past. And so that's when I got a little interested in Arduino and even pickaxe with Merck. So those are my connecting points. So, but the key is, I really had to learn CW, relearn CW. And I remembered like 5 letters, E and T, which is a DOF, for those who don't know. And but on September 3rd, 2010, I made my first CW QSO ever. And it was a thrilling day. A couple of the guys here, Paul and Jeremy, they received the email. I actually stayed home from work that day. It was a Thursday or Friday. Real nervous. I'm gonna do this. I've been working, learned CW for 6 months straight. I'm finally going to get on and do this thing. I'd only been on sideband a few months at this point, so I didn't even have a lot of on-air experience, but I wanted to get this done. To me, that was being a ham, getting a CW QSO in the blog. So I did it, and I was nervous, I was stressed, and I didn't even go to work afterwards. I just take the rest of the day off. That was too much. And, but then I started I've been in this club for a while and said, I need to try QRP. Well, then there was a QRP sprint going on a month later, and so I tried that, and lo and behold, it worked too. So 5 watts, and I thought, okay, QRP is kind of fun. Let's see what I can do with that. So that's kind of how I got to where I am.
No context when you were a novice then?
Nothing,
Okay.
absolutely nothing.
Didn't get on the air at all?
Didn't get on the air once. The only time I got on the air was part of my novice test. Our instructor had us do a short QSO with someone in Texas, a friend of his he had set up. So, because the test was sending and receiving CW. So that's how he had his friends send us something, and then we had to send it back in exchange. So technically, that was the first, but it didn't really, I wasn't even licensed yet.
I just asked them, how many watts was your first CW contact?
100 watts.
Okay.
And I made it all the way to Michigan, so. It was 40 meters, and I'll talk a little bit about that too, but it was with the group SKCC, Straight Key Century Club. And they have basically they run like a novice frequency band in the 40 meter area at 7.114. And I'd already known that, so I went right to there, called CQ, and the guy in Michigan came back to me. And it was, again, it was much more nerve-wracking for me than him, obviously, but yeah, it was 100 watts the first time. If you have any questions, just yell them out. It's more of a trip down memory lane for me. So what is QRP? Well, most of us know that we think low power CW. That's it. No problem. However, I think it's really a revelation to me by being part of this group. It's more of a multi-functional activity. And that's what's been making it fun for me. Reverend George Dobbs, he speaks at 4 Days of May in Dayton every year, G3RJV. He likes to say wits over watts. And I always thought that was kind of a cool thing. I think I saw some T-shirts when I was there that said wits over watts. And you know, I understand QRP used to be 100 watts or less back in the early days. And it's kind of confusing me when I read some of the old articles and they talk about QRP. Yet I realized these guys weren't using it 100 watts, and then they refer to QRPP, and that was 5 watts and less. Now QRP is 5 watts and less, and QRPP is 1 watt or less. So and that's called milliwatting. So I mean, I think the jargon has changed over the years, but I like the idea idea of the wits over watts. You have to, those of you who don't know, you really have to think your way through it sometimes. You can't just get on and plug away. So. Another famous QRPer, AA0ZZ. And to me, Craig's statement really encapsulated this for me at that point. Was attempting to understand what happens when you voluntarily put limitations on yourself. We want to know how things work. Well, that's kind of what got me into this club. It reminded me of what old-time ham radio was. I wanted to know how a radio works. And that's really why I started doing QRP, because to me, that was what was available to help me learn and start this journey. So, Craig, you know, I told you I was going to talk a little about you, but I think it's a great, you know, you voluntarily put limitations on yourself. You know, it's not hard to put out 1,000 watts and make contact. When you start getting down to 5 watts and 1 watt, you have to look at more of what you're doing and how you're doing it and the equipment that you have. And so, you know, not that I'm an expert, but I did recognize that as being kind of helpful. Bottom line is, I think, Craig, you said a little bit of this too. We are experimenters. We're learners at heart, asking questions, will this work, why, and how? You know, one of the things at work, and maybe some of you have done this, where there's a thing called strength finders. And you take a test and it talks about what drives you, your passions and everything. And one of mine was that I'm a learner. I like to learn things. And that's what fit into this club very well, was that we're a bunch of learners here. We come here not because we know everything, but because we want to learn things, and we find everything everyone else does is fascinating. And we're all at different levels of that experience. And so, yeah, we want to know why and how these things work. Any questions? Good. So why do I QRP? It's very simple. Going back to the beginning, 1979, my first understanding of ham radio was CW and HF. You know, that's what you can do for the most part. Today, it's VHF, UHF. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying it was a different mindset when I started than what it is now. Today, you get a technician's license, you get your HT, and you start working on the repeaters. Back then, you got your license, you probably either built or bought a QRP rig or something along those lines, and you were already learned CW, and you got on HF. That's how you got started. You also, you know, both time frames, we learn electronics, how the things are working. But to me, what this club is doing, what QRP is, that to me, that was what ham radio was when I first got started, what got me interested in taking the classes in the first place. I like to learn and I like to build. You know, I talk about the learning, but the building, it's fun. And when you're putting things together, you learn more about them. And I learned that kits were the easiest way to do it. I mean, I still have trouble looking at a schematic and figuring out what in the world I'm putting together half the time. Probably way more than half the time, to be honest with you. But I can build kits. You know, I've been building kits since I was a little kid, you know, models and that kind of thing. So if I have good instructions, I can follow them, and I've learned to do it. And what I couldn't figure out, you guys here, were very helpful to me doing this. But I learned very early on that kits were an easy way to transition into this field of QRP. So, but what I learned was most kits are CW and QRP oriented. First kit I built was Craig's Kia. I built it, and that was in February of 2010. You saw when my first CW QSO was, October of 2010. That thing sat there, and sat there, and sat there. Now, eventually I realized I could hook it up and I could actually practice sending without getting on the air, and so I did use it for that. But it was kind of frustrating to see the things we build were just sitting there. They weren't getting used by me. And so I think, well, and again, my mindset was, all right, I already wanted to learn CW anyhow. So this was the next transition for me. If I wanted to do it, if I wanted to use what I was building, then I need to learn CW and run QRP. My operating philosophy, however, is I love QRP contests. I love them because we're both doing QRP. You know, when I'm rag chewing, I don't do QRP as often. I may start out that way, but I've learned that it's not always the best way to hold a rag chew. And depending on what how strong the signal is from the other guy, but you know, QRP contests for me are a blast because I'm working just as hard as they are. It may be harder because I have really cheap antennas and everything, you know. And so I get a real kick out of QRP contests, and there are a lot of them out there, as a lot of you guys know, and so it's a great opportunity to get into it. My station, very simple. You know, I have a Yaesu 897, just a very all mode, all band type thing. I built the K1, which I brought in here I think a year or so ago and showed you guys. Again, a QRP rig. I use a Czech Army straight key. I have the K1 EL wind gear that a couple of you brought in. I built a Scorpions paddle from a kit, G5RV Junior from a kit. I have a tuner that wasn't from a kit, but I actually bought that. And I have a portable vertical. Your key's not up there, Craig, is it? I have that too. And you know, so some of it, a lot of it I built, not everything I have, but I could actually run a station just from things that I built. And to me, that's kind of fun. But it's not as easy to do it at 100 watts as it is at 5 watts. So the station can be very basic. Okay, now we're getting into some of the technical stuff that, you know, I'm talking over my head, and you guys know this much better. If you have any questions, I'll have to defer to the crowd, but let's explain a little bit about it. You know, the FCC says that we're only supposed to use the power necessary to maintain desired communication. That could be 1 watt, that could be 1,500 watts. I mean, it really depends on propagation and a lot of different things. But as Craig said, we voluntarily put these limitations on ourselves in QRP, so we have to work within those constraints. QRP operating, again, takes skill, strategy, and patience. Man, I can't tell you how many times patience has come into play. When you're sitting there and you're listening and you're listening and you're sending did-it-da-da, did it, you know, which means question marks, meaning I don't know what you're sending, or a K7 did-it-da-da. I mean, I know the first part, I got part of it. You know, it can take a minute or two sometimes to try to get the person's call sign and then get an exchange. I mean, it takes a lot of practice. Sometimes it comes in really, really loud and you're shocked. But there are times where you really have to work at it. And you know, QRP rigs don't have a lot of bells and whistles either, so it's sometimes a little harder to, I don't have a K3, so I work with what I have. The other thing I recognize is that the other guy has to have really good ears. You know, and it's one of the reasons I enjoy QRP contests, because I know I have to work just as hard as he is a lot of times. It's easy for me to send 5 watts from here and hit the big stations in Europe that have Yagis higher than, you know, half the buildings in my hometown. You know, it's a, but you know, to send to somebody else that's using the same restrictions I am, that's at least it's an even playing field there. But I understand that if I'm using QRP in a big contest, like an ARL contest or a CQ contest, the other guy's probably pulling in a lot of the work, and that's just the reality. They know that too, but I understand that a lot of times it's the other guy that makes it work more than I do. QRP, it's not just CW. I mean, this was a revelation to me after a while. You can use sideband. You can use any of the digital modes, QRP. Before I got my first CW, or maybe slightly after there, I wasn't real comfortable with QRP CW period. And the QRP ARCI Club is having its 50th anniversary, and they're doing something similar to what ARL is doing right now with W1AW. They had a different state every month or every week of the year. And I think Mert was heading up the Minnesota contingent, and he was looking for volunteers to help. And I wanted to participate, but I wasn't comfortable handling pile-ups with CW after like a month or two of being on CW. So he said, well, why don't you just do sideband? Okay, well, I can do that, you know. And so he says, well, you know, sideband, you know, there's 2 philosophies. Sometimes it's 5 watts, sometimes it's 10 watts, you know. So he says, run 10 watts and see what you get. Just get a log, and then you can send it to me, and I'll worry about this. So I signed up for a few nights, and the first night really didn't go real well. You know, I had 1 or 2 people, and I could barely hear them, and they were really struggling to hear me. But I was calling CQ, so I figured, well, if I'm calling CQ and they hear me, you know, it's more their issue than mine at that point. But we worked it through, and I made a few contacts. But then I think it was the 3rd night I got on, like right after I got home from work, so like 5:30, and I spent the next hour plus working up and down the East Coast and Southeast United States, and I'm getting report signals with 5.5, 5.7, and you know, and so it gave me an opportunity to tell everybody what's going on, and And it was so much fun hearing the other guy say, "Oh, I'm running 150 watts. Let me turn it down to 10, see if you can hear me." And it was like this. It was like an exciting time. I'm running sideband, 10 watts, QRP, and making contact. I probably hit 20 states over those few days. So it can work on sideband too, and I think that's probably one of the messages I want to get out. It's not just CW. QRP contests are a great way to get started. Sprint, QRP ARCI has one through 3 or 4 times a year. NAQCC, North American QRP and CW Club, they have a sprint every month, and it's fun. And my first QRP CW contact was during one of their sprints. There's Flying Pigs. They're out of Ohio, Cincinnati area, but it's international. They have one Sunday night a month. Four State has one Sunday night a month. And then there are fox hunts. And I've not participated in those. I think, have any of you guys participated in the fox hunt? Right? I hear they're a lot of fun. And but there are a lot of QRP activity out there. If you really want to get involved with it and practice your skills, there's a lot to do.
SKCC's got some weekend sprint every month.
Yeah, I was just talking about QRP contests only though, at this point. I got another list of others, but yeah. But these are strictly just QRP. Everybody in it is QRP. And I think even QRP ARCI has a sideband contest for QRP as well, I think once or twice a year. So you can do it that way. So a lot of opportunities. And then again, there are categories in the ARL, CQ, SKCC, FIS is another CW club. Most major contests and clubs have a QRP category, so you can get in and play with them too. And then I haven't done this, but I've contacted a lot of them at an event. It's called SOTA, Summits on the Air. Somebody was here just talking about going out. Was it today? But basically, someone running a QRP rig, they go up into a mountain or a high hill, and they set up a station there, and they make contacts. And they act almost like islands on there, different islands, so these are different summits around the world. And one of the more famous ones is WG08T. He has 2 goats that he takes up into the hills, and I was able to contact him a little over a year ago, got his QSL card, and it's kind of fun. I mean, here's a guy who's basically using this pack mules to take his stuff up there, and then they think they just kind of hang out while he's on the air, and he doesn't have to do all the carrying that way. There's goats carry everything up for him. And a lot of times you hear him, I think he's mostly out in the Rockies.
Yeah.
Anybody else ever contact him?
Oh yeah, working a bunch of times.
And I remember one, was it him or somebody else? They did one of their summits on the air, and then afterward they did a video on YouTube, and they had pictures of all the people they had contacted, taking a picture off of QRZ or something like that. And there were actually 2 people from our club's pictures was in it. One was Mert and one was Bob, K9OSC. So I thought that was kind of fascinating to see that too. And then there are the Samuel Awards. Worked all state, worked all continents, DXCC, 100 countries, or KMPW, that's 1,000 miles per watt. That's kind of a fun one to work on. And I've actually just got the DXCC this past spring, so that took a while to get. And a lot of work goes into that one. I mean, one contest, I think it was the one in March, the CQ one, or ARL, I forget which one it was. I was like at 98 or 99, and I still need 1 or 2 more. And South Africa, I heard that, I could hear them, I think, I don't have South Africa yet. But as you can guess, the pilot was just horrendous. I mean, but they were pretty loud, so I thought, well, I have a good shot. I'll talk about that in a minute. So I went in and, I kind of went off to the edge of the band a little bit where they were at, and I just sat there, and a football game was on, or a baseball game, or some basketball game, something was on. And I just sat there, and I kept hitting my key here, kept hitting my key here, kept hitting my key here. And it was like 6 or 7 minutes in, and all of a sudden, bam, they came back to me. I'm thinking, that's incredible, because I know a lot of these people are not running 5 watts to contact these guys. And so I made the QSO, and it was like 2 days later, it's confirmed on Logbook of the World. So it really happened, and you just never know. I mean, it's kind of exciting when you're running such low wattage and you do make a really cool contact like that. The KMPW, miles per watt. I talked about friend Paul Stroud, what he had done, you know, I haven't gone that far. I don't know, some of you guys have run what your biggest is. Mine is Hawaii with 1 watt, you know, so it's at 3,700 miles. For me, that was a huge deal. Dan?
Does it matter what the mode of transportation,
Yes.
transmission for the 1,000 miles per watt, like a digital mode can get much more?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, you know. So you can use digital, CW, sideband, whatever you want. So, and a couple of these clubs actually have the awards. The QRP ARCI does, NAQCC, although theirs is CW only, but a couple of the clubs do have certificates for any mode. So, but yeah, it's a matter of fact, the one club, NAQCC, I realized they had an award for if you get 100 or more of these 1,000 miles per watt contacts. And I looked at my log, did analyze one, and I was like at 72, 73. So I made sure the next contest I got in, I ran at 1 watt and was just trying to crank up the rest of them just so I could get to the 100, you know, because I thought it was kind of a cool thing to do. But you can, but the same awards are out there, and so you can go for them either way. But does it work? Well, I mean, you can already tell. Yeah, it does work. We've all done it. A lot of us have done it, and I've done it. This is where it gets into a lot of details that I'm still a little vague on, but I'm repeating what I hear, and I know it does happen. 5 watt CW, from what I'm told, is pretty much the same as running 100 watts on sideband as far as the strength of signal. You know, there's some variations there, but you know, I don't know. Maybe you guys can explain it, but I've seen that 3 or 4 times, so I figure it must be semi-true. But I mean, it's one of the reasons why CW is really popular with QRP, because the signal is better that way, and it's also really popular with DXers, because I mean, I'm amazed countries that I don't know how they can hear me, but they do when I'm running CWs that I know they would never hear me running sideband because the signal is so faint. But, so you take that one. 1S unit is 6 decibels. We all had to learn that somewhere in our tech class. If you increase from 5 watts to 100 watts, that's a 13 decibel gain. So really it's only 2 S units running the difference between 100 watts and 5 watts. So that's what I'm saying. If I hear someone out there calling CQ and they're at an S9 plus, well, I know they're going to hear me because I'm going to be in S7, maybe in S6 at the worst. I mean, I'm loud enough for them to hear me. Now, if I can barely hear them, and you know, if they're running QRP, that could be a reason why. But if they're not running QRP and they're at S3 or 4, then maybe I won't make a contact. But if they're coming in really loud, there's no reason why they probably shouldn't hear me as well. I'm going to be pretty close to what they're listening for. So, has that been everybody else's experience? I mean, does that sound fairly close to accurately true?
And a lot of it's propagation.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta hit it just
Yeah.
5-10 minutes later, and it just closed down, and you can't do it.
Right. And that's true whether you're running 1,000 watts or 1 watt. I mean, propagation rules as much as anything sometimes. And so if it's there, it's there, and you can grab it. But I thought these 2 things were kind of interesting. Again, I'm not the big electrician, radio frequency guy, so you take it for what it's worth. Getting started, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, you could have that nice big FT 5000 up there at the top, spending lots of money and all the bells and whistles. Turn that sucker down to 5 watts and use that. A lot of people do. You could build a QRP rig there in the middle that's K1, and you know, and that works just as well. Or you can buy one already placed, and I have all these on here. Turn down your watts. You know, 5 watt CW, 5 or 10 watt sideband. Most of us have a rig. We can do that. That's not going to be that hard to do. Buy a new or used QRP radio. You know, the FT817 down there at the bottom. Yaesu radio, it's a QRP radio. There are a few others that are pre-built. You just buy them, plug them in, and use them. They're already at QRP level. Or you can build something. Build a kit. And that's really, again, that's why I got started, because I wanted to build things, and the kits were there. You can homebrew. This is hopefully where I'll get to someday. So I can just kind of experiment like a lot of you guys do, and look at a schematic, change it around, play around with this and that, you know, and I think that'll be a blast when I get to that level. But I know that it's much easier to do at QRP levels than it is at other levels. So. Join the QRP club. come to see us. I mean, we're not focused on QRP, but it's one of the reasons why I did want to present this to the group is just to remind us of our heritage. I mean, this really is a QRP club at heart. I mean, most of us came here because of our love for QRP, and it's always going to be a part of it, at least as long as I'm here and running things. I hope we get a number of QRP presentations. I think it's a lot of fun. I think that's where we learn a lot, is at that level. But join a club, and I think it's a great way to learn. So we listed some of the other clubs up there too that are helpful. Learn CW. I think as much as some of us don't want to do that, it does take time, and doggone it, I mean, I started learning it when I was in my, well, a little bit younger than I am now, and it wasn't as easy to do as when it was when I was 14. I mean, it just was not. But it was fun to do, and I kept working at it and working at it, and what probably took me 2 or 3 weeks to do at 14 took me about 6 to 8 months when I was 40 plus, you know. But I kept working at it, working at it, working at it, and eventually I got enough nerve to get on the air to try it, and I made a million mistakes. We all have. Matter of fact, I've been doing it for 4 years, and I still make mistakes when I get on. And most amateurs recognize that. So you just get on and you play with it and you learn. The learning CW is a huge part of that. So CW is the key, huh? As Paul would say, ugh.
Right.
There are some good ways to learn CW, and key is you got to practice it. You're not going to learn it if you don't practice it, and you got to practice it a lot. Not hours and hours a day. I think it was Steve that told me early on, he says, just spend 10, 15 minutes a night just doing something, learn a couple letters here, a couple letters, build on it, and it did work. There's some great, excuse me, some great software out there. All this is free. That G4 phone, you can download it right from the website, and it goes letter by letter, symbol, you know, it's what I used to start with, to be honest with you. The other one I used, once I learned about it, was LCWO, basically learncwonline.net. You get a login, you don't have to download it on your computer, you can work on it anywhere. I mean, if you're out on a camping trip and you have a Wi-Fi connection, you can get on and practice CW that way. It's almost like a testing hierarchy. It takes you letter by letter, then you do words, and then you do call signs and pro signs. I mean, it kind of really builds on it. Practice QSOs. The roofcxp.net, I learned about that one from this club. It's more of almost like a contesting thing where it throws out a lot of call signs to you for the most part, and you try to type them in as quick as you can. And then join one of these clubs. Every one of these clubs are very newbie friendly. SKCC, huge newbie friendly. I talked about how I got on 7.114, and it didn't matter, I was going 2 words a minute. There are somebody out there listening for me and work with me on this. NAQC, same thing, they have some slow speed nets that they work through. FIS is out there, and the ARCI, you know, all these clubs, and then there are others. I mean, these are just a few. You get into the 4-state sprints and stuff, and somebody will work with you. They'll always find someone to work with you to get better. But I think CW is a huge piece of why QRP has been a lot of fun for me.
SKCC's got a great website for chat and for getting skids.
Okay.
And if you go on there, and when I was first coming back to CW, got on there, you post your call and your frequency and put QRS on the back of it, and they'll come beating down the doors to work a new guy, you know. So
Yeah, I say SKC was easily the one that I went to when I first started learning CW, and I've been to that sketch page a couple times too, and it's fun. And even then, even if after you get comfortable, you can go to the schedule page and say, hey, I don't have North Dakota. You can find someone on there that's from North Dakota, and you can work them.
I've gotten into the habit. I post my call and my frequency every time I'm on, and sometimes people come and find me if they need Minnesota or whatever, and sometimes they don't, but it's a great bunch of guys.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, they're at Dayton, so if you go to Dayton, they always have a booth there and everything too. So And for those of you that are technicians, I mean, we think, you know, you have to be a general above to get high frequency, permissions, but you don't. As a tech, you can have privileges as well using CW. And, I think it was at 15 meters, 40 and 80, if I remember right. And so, you know, if you have a technician's license, you can still learn CW and get on and work the world with CW, and it's a lot of fun. So, don't feel like just because you're a technician, you can only work the repeaters in the area. You have HF privileges as well. And then my favorite form, the straight key. I mean, I love playing with straight keys. I have a paddle, I have the keyers, but I just something about pounding a little bit of brass that makes it a lot of fun too. So what do you do? Need to build something. I think that's the other piece of it. It's not only operating, but build something. You know, I start out with, as I said, Craig's Keyer, and it's still available. And he was talking about it again here today under revision. That's, I think, is that the most recent one up there in the corner, or pretty close to it?
That's the one that's being sold right now.
Yeah, and you know, go build something. I think that's where it really starts getting fun after the operating. You can build dummy load. I think we had that a year or two ago for one of our build-a-thons. You know, did a little dummy load from QRP kits. I think we also did a transceiver, or was it a receiver from there as well, recently. So yeah, another spot. Now I think that's even one of the transceivers from down there. QRP Me, that's out of Maine. They have a lot of QRP kits as well to use. You can build one of the Elcraft transceivers, you know, the K1 and the K2. I think the K3 isn't technically, I think they can call it a kit, but it's more of an assembly of boards, or you can buy it pre-assembled. But if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of doing wrapping toroids and soldering things, you know, the K1 and the K2 are the way to go. A little more pricey, but very good radios. Building something, as we know, again, great club activities. It's one of the things I think I'm excited about with us going to build-a-thons a year. I think that's one of the things that really brings this club together, are putting things together and talking about it. You know, not just independently, but coming together a couple times a year to do it as well. And then I want to give a plug out, you know, again, one of the early things I did was get involved with St. Paul Radio Club circuit builders. Basically, they have a build-a-thon every Saturday morning, right? Right, Orsi? Most Saturday mornings, you know. You know,
Not during the summers, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, Dan was the poster child this month for their newsletter, and
I didn't see the newsletter.
oh, you haven't seen it yet? Yeah, you're in the front center there.
Oh, my.
But you know, that's why I mean, I met a lot of you.
Told me about it?
I met a lot of you guys through the St. Paul Radio Club. I think before my first meeting here or whatever. But we were building Craig's Pickell at that time when I first started at Circuit Builder. So, you know, I'd encourage you. I don't get there as much anymore because of circumstances, but you know, it's a lot of fun too. So build something. That's all I'm saying. Build something.
I point out,
Yeah.
that's the Cyclone 40 by 4-stage QRP down the lower right.
Okay.
That's Dave Cripe's rig that showed me how to build cases like this. I talked to him at a Ozark Con 2 years ago now, two past, and he showed me how that all works, and I go, oh! And that's where I started building cases like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, I mean, I think going to this, that's right, I forget, now you say that, I remember that now. I can remember where I slapped some of these pictures off of, but I think if anything, it's been one of my pet peeves of QRP kits is a lot of them don't come with cases. And again, being a novice newbie type, that's kind of a struggle for me to figure out how to put things in a case. So this is great that this happens. And again, some of you helped me with cases. I've got a few of them done, but
It's got permeability too, by the way. It has a little slug that goes inside a nylon cylinder there with a coil on it. You see it? Very unique kind of tuning, but it's very effective and it's very nice. It's a very novel rig. When Dave presented it that year, I'd just been out in the hall talking with someone, who needs another 40-meter rig? Ha ha ha. And then he gets up and presents a 40-meter rig, and I said,
I do.
But you know, I jumped out and bought it because it was unique. It was
Yeah.
unique things that went on in that rig that taught me some new things.
And that goes
about
back to your quote, you know, it's something different
Something new.
and made it fun.
Something new.
And
Yep.
it's always changing, so.
Yeah.
So tools, I got this from Steve very early on. You know, I just throw this out there because it was actually helpful for me. One of the first things, I think I had my first meeting, I emailed Steve and says, hey, what do I need to get started? He sent me an email and he said, hey, get some of these tools, you know, so again, it's just there. We're gonna post all this to the website, so if you really don't have these tools, you can look and see what Steve told me to get. And yeah, I mean, I have a couple things like dental tools, I'm thinking, huh, what? But yeah, I actually have used it a few times, and it's been nice to have. But, you know, that's the other side of the building. You do need a few of these things in order to do it, so. Which was the nice thing about the circuit builders, another plug, all that stuff was pretty much there. So early on, I didn't have to worry about having some of the nicer things. I was able to use theirs.
I always, one of my favorite tools is an X-Acto knife with a number 11 blade. It's gotta be a number 11. And a number 11 blade will do everything. You can take insulation off coax, you can scrape magnet wire, you can, traces that are bridged together, you can cut them and stuff.
Yeah.
But that number 11 blade on an X-Acto knife is really a very useful tool.
Good. Can add that to the list. I don't know what number it is though, now you say that.
Add forceps on there too,
Forceps? Okay.
very handy.
Okay, some resources, again, this club. I mean, this club and the circuit builders have easily been my go-to places. I mean, there's no doubt. There's so much knowledge in this club, it's mind-boggling. I didn't even realize it till, it didn't take me long to realize it, but you know, when you come here, you realize there's some smart people here. The QRP ARCI, they do a quarterly magazine, QRP Quarterly, and do the 4 days in May presentations at Dayton every year. Matter of fact, I have a couple of, I think we passed them out last month there. Here's a couple of their magazines. You can look at them recently. If you don't get them, I'd highly recommend joining them. It's, what is it, $25 a year. You get 4 magazines a year, and just some great things in there about building and operating QRP. So check them out. Plus they have sprints and stuff, like I said, too, for operating. GQRP, that's the British one. Kind of the same thing as QRP ARCI here, but and they have a little magazine called Sprat. A lot smaller than this, but I think it comes out quarterly as well. So, good resource there. The NAQCC, again, that's North American QRP and CW Club. They do a monthly newsletter. They have different nets that they have, you know, sprints. So, you know, great club to check out and be a part of as well. 4-state QRP club, you know, a number of you have been to Ozark Con. I think that's in April every year. Is that right? You know, it's like it's right before Dayton, and I haven't been to it. I'd love to, but it's a bad time for me at work usually. And you know, there's a build-a-thon there, a lot of presentations. Craig, you presented last year, I know, and they have sprints. Their website is full of kit. They do a lot of kits, make kits available to the group or to the community. So check them out. And then there are a lot of ARL books and articles. You know, you see them in our CQ magazine as well. You know, the book that really I first read was one by Rich Arlen, Low Power Communications. I think it's the 4th or 5th edition now, and very fascinating as far as a big overview of what's out there. I probably stole a little bit from him in this presentation, so I don't know Rich, but hey, maybe he'll call me and say, hey, you should give me more credit. But anyhow, I just did. But anyhow, it's a great book, and it's where I first read about Paul Stroud too. And then QRPL Reflector. I don't know how many of you are on that, but you can sign up. Just go out and Google it. QRP, I forget and just sign up for it. And you may want to get digest version rather than every email, because there's some days it can be dozens and dozens of emails. If it's during Dayton, you're going to get hundreds of them every day. But for the most part, it's not too bad. But there are always some fascinating discussions going on in World QRP. And to be honest with you, I don't find a whole lot of them on the operating side. I mean, most of the discussions have to do with the technical side. And so I've learned a lot from that, and also realized how stupid I am by reading them because I don't understand them. So, but it's a great reflector as well. Other kits out there, there's QRP kits. There's Steve Weber, KD1 JV. He has a number of kits out there. and then MT Technologies, or mtechnologies.com, and I don't remember what that one.
Wilderness Radio.
Oh yeah, Wilderness Radio. So again, why do I QRP? Let's wrap this up. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? All about me. Why do I do this? But no, it's why anybody should do it if you're interested. Simply, I like to build. I enjoy building, and I like to operate. More importantly, what I build. Like I said early on, I learned I build 2 or 3 things and sit there, and they're just like trophies from the spelling bee in 3rd grade. You know, nice to look at, but had a little less meaning to me over time. But once I started using them in my own station, or if I went out and did something, then it became a lot of fun. And again, a lot of things you can build. I mean, these are some of the things I've built. I mentioned a few: the K1, Easy Keyer, the Bigfoot paddle, the Magic Box. I think that's really cool, and I haven't got to use it a whole lot. I've tested it, but it's through the 4-state, and basically, you know, a lot of QRP, especially in the past, was you build a receiver, you build a transmitter, and they're separate units. This Magic Box allowed you basically to plug them into it, and it became a transceiver. So you can mix and match different receivers and transmitters, and I mean, it was kind of fun to do. Well, I don't even know how to say that, the NESCAP or whatever. That's an audio filter from the New England Club. Again, Craig Spickel, dummy loads, the NorCal Power SWR meter. That one, I don't even know if that's still available or not. I brought that in about a year ago for everybody to look at as well. But you know, these are all things that I've used. I've been able to build them and use them, and that makes it more fun. So, again, that's what I do. So, QRP, there's a motley crew. You might recognize a few more of them. Obviously, yours truly on the left. There's Craig, Dave, Kent, my dad, Mert, and Larry. This was our group at Dayton a couple years ago, and we got a picture taken on the side of the street. I think my dad and I were coming from someplace, and everybody else was going to someplace, and we had to grab somebody and say, "Hey, take our picture." We hadn't got one yet, so. But to me, this is what it's about, having fun together as well. So have fun, build, experiment, and get on the air. That's what it's all about to me. So, any questions? Yes.
No question, but I just talking about QRP clubs and stuff. I just recently discovered the website for the Russian QRP club.
No way?
It's all in Russian, except for they'll have sometimes cartoons that are in English or something, or some words in English. But it's real fun just to look at the pictures. You know, these guys are out there in a camping trip or whatever, and they've got their own QRP rigs, you know, and Ellicraft's real popular, but their homebrew stuff. And so it's really, you know, it's fun to look at, because you look at it and think, you know, I don't understand any of this, but I certainly understand what that picture is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't it one of the Russian guys that came up with the 7.2 instead of 7.3? Yeah.
And there's a lot of talent in Ukraine.
Yeah.
There is some really fantastic engineering talent.
Doing more with less, boy, that's their middle name there.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it
They
really
have to,
is.
just like Cuba. I mean, they're putting together things, that's why their stations sound like they do. But really, I mean, they're doing it with a shoestring, and it's wonderful to support them. I agree.
Anything else? No, thanks. Hope I motivated one or two of you to at least think about it again. And,
Thanks.
but anyhow, so you guys, that's all I have to say about that. So see you next month. And if somebody doesn't volunteer, you might have to listen to me talk about the new tax code or something. So, that I know a lot more about.